Picture this. You're 25 years old, sitting in a coffee shop, convinced you have life figured out. Someone twice your age walks up and says, "The secret to happiness isn't getting what you want, but wanting what you have." You'd probably roll your eyes and think they're just bitter about their unfulfilled dreams. Fast forward 40 years, and suddenly those words hit different. Today, we're diving into 12 profound life lessons that seem completely backwards when you're young, but become crystal clear wisdom after decades of living. Some of these will challenge everything you believe about success, relationships, and what really matters. And I guarantee at least 3 of them will make you rethink major decisions you're facing right now. Let's start with the most counterintuitive one. Lesson number 1. The things you desperately chase in your 20s and 30s often become the very chains that bind you in your 50s and 60s. When you're young, you believe more is always better. More money, more recognition, more stuff, more experiences. You work 60-hour weeks to afford that luxury car, thinking it'll make you happy. You say yes to every social invitation because you fear missing out. You accumulate possessions like they're trophies of your success. But here's what nobody tells you about the accumulation game. Every single thing you acquire requires maintenance, attention, and energy. That dream house needs constant upkeep. The fancy car breaks down at the worst moments. The overflowing closet becomes a source of decision fatigue every morning. The packed social calendar leaves you exhausted and longing for quiet evenings at home. People over 60 have learned that subtraction, not addition, often leads to greater satisfaction. They've discovered the profound peace that comes from owning fewer things, but appreciating them more deeply. They choose quality over quantity in everything from friendships to possessions. This isn't about becoming a minimalist monk. It's about recognizing that every yes to something is a no to something else, and being intentional about where you spend your finite energy. This leads us to lesson number 2. Your body is not invincible, and the way you treat it in your 20s will determine your quality of life decades later. Young people often view their bodies like rental cars, pushing them to the limit without considering long-term consequences. You stay up all night, eat garbage food, skip exercise, ignore pain signals, and somehow bounce back the next day feeling fine. But your body keeps a detailed accounting of every choice. That back pain from poor posture doesn't just disappear, it compounds. Those late nights create sleep debt that accumulates interest. The junk food doesn't just affect tomorrow's energy, it sets patterns that become harder to break with each passing year. The injuries you ignore become chronic conditions that limit your activities for decades. People who've lived long enough understand that health isn't just the absence of disease, it's the presence of vitality. They've learned to listen to their body's subtle signals instead of waiting for the fire alarm. They've discovered that feeling good isn't about being perfect, it's about being consistent with small, positive choices. They know that the investments you make in your health during your younger years pay dividends that compound over time, while neglect creates debts that become increasingly expensive to pay off. Lesson number 3 might surprise you. The people who seem to have it all figured out are often the most confused of all. When you're young, you look at successful people and assume they possess some secret knowledge that you're missing. You think they have a master plan, unwavering confidence, and clear direction. You compare your internal chaos to their external composure and feel inadequate. But decades of living reveal a different truth. The most accomplished people often feel like imposters, constantly questioning their decisions and wondering if they're on the right path. They've learned that confidence isn't the absence of doubt, it's the ability to take action despite uncertainty. They understand that everyone is figuring it out as they go, making the best decisions with incomplete information, and adapting when circumstances change. This realization is simultaneously humbling and liberating. Humbling because you realize you're not uniquely confused or behind in life. Liberating because you stop waiting for certainty before taking action. You begin to embrace the fact that life is an improvisation, not a scripted performance, and the goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty, but to get comfortable dancing with it. Now we reach lesson number 4, which completely flips the script on how young people think about time. The years go faster, but the days can go slower if you know how to live them properly. Young people often complain about time dragging, especially during boring periods or when they're waiting for something exciting to happen. They wish time would speed up so they could reach their goals faster. But as you age, you discover a strange paradox. The years seem to accelerate at an alarming pace. Suddenly, it's been 5 years since that conversation that feels like yesterday. Decades feel like they passed in a blink. Yet paradoxically, when you learn to be present and mindful, individual days can feel rich and full and satisfying in ways you never experienced when you were rushing toward the future. This happens because young people often live in a constant state of anticipation, always focused on the next milestone, the next weekend, the next vacation. They miss the texture and detail of ordinary moments because they're mentally somewhere else. Older people have learned that life isn't just the highlight reel. It's the quiet moments between the big events where most of living actually happens. Lesson number 5 challenges everything society tells us about productivity and achievement. Doing less often accomplishes more than doing more. Young people equate busyness with importance and productivity with worth. They pack their schedules to capacity, believing that constant motion equals progress. They wear exhaustion like a badge of honor and feel guilty about rest. But experience teaches you that most of what feels urgent isn't actually important. The real breakthroughs often come during periods of reflection and rest, not during frantic activity. The best decisions emerge from quiet contemplation, not hurried reactions. Deep work requires sustained focus, which is impossible when you're constantly switching between tasks. People over 60 have learned the art of strategic laziness. They understand that saying no to good opportunities creates space for great ones. They've discovered that having margin in your life isn't wasteful, it's essential for creativity, relationships, and mental health. They know that the goal isn't to fill every moment with activity, but to make sure the activities you choose align with what matters most. This brings us to lesson number 6, which reveals something profound about human relationships. The people you think will be in your life forever often fade away, while unexpected connections become your deepest bonds. Young people often assume their current relationships are permanent fixtures. Best friends from high school, college roommates, early romantic partners, these feel like the core cast of your life story. But life has a way of redistributing the people around you. Career changes, geographic moves, evolving interests, and different life stages naturally shift your social landscape. People grow in different directions. What once felt like unbreakable bonds can gradually weaken without any dramatic event or falling out. Meanwhile, someone you barely notice today, a coworker, a neighbor, a friend of a friend, might become one of the most important people in your life. This isn't sad. It's simply how life works. Experienced people have learned to hold relationships lightly while valuing them deeply. They don't cling desperately to connections that are naturally evolving, and they remain open to new people entering their lives at any stage. They understand that some relationships are meant to last a season, others a lifetime, and both types have value and purpose. Lesson number 7 completely reframes how we think about failure and setbacks. Your biggest disasters often become your greatest gifts, but only in retrospect. When you're young and something goes wrong, it feels catastrophic. The job you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the business that failed, the opportunity that slipped away. You ruminate on what went wrong and how things could have been different. But time provides perspective that youth cannot access. Often the path that seemed like a dead end was actually a redirect towards something better. The rejection that crushed you opened space for an opportunity that was a better fit. The relationship that ended made room for the person you were truly meant to be with. The failure taught you lessons that became essential for later success. This doesn't mean everything bad that happens to you is secretly good. Some experiences are genuinely difficult and don't have hidden silver linings. But many setbacks that feel devastating in the moment become integral parts of your story, providing strength, wisdom, and resilience you wouldn't have developed otherwise. Now we come to lesson number 8, which challenges fundamental assumptions about success and achievement. The things you accomplish matter less than who you become while accomplishing them. Young people are intensely focused on external markers of success: the degree, the job title, the salary, the house, the awards, the recognition. These feel like the point of all your effort and sacrifice. But decades of living reveal that achievements are temporary and often less satisfying than anticipated. The promotion you worked years to earn becomes routine within months. The goal you obsessed over gets checked off your list and quickly replaced by a new obsession. The external validation feels good momentarily, but doesn't create lasting fulfillment. What endures and compounds is the person you become in pursuit of your goals. The discipline you develop, the relationships you build, the character you strengthen, the skills you acquire, the resilience you cultivate. These internal changes are the real treasure. They can't be taken away by economic downturns, industry changes, or bad luck. They become part of who you are and influence every future experience. Lesson number 9 reveals something surprising about knowledge and learning. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. And this is actually liberating, not frustrating. Young people often feel pressure to have strong opinions about everything and to project confidence even when they're uncertain. Admitting ignorance feels like weakness or failure. But extensive life experience teaches you that knowledge is like an expanding circle. The bigger your circle of knowledge becomes, the larger the perimeter where it touches the unknown. People who've studied deeply in any field recognize the vast complexity and nuance that exists beneath surface-level understanding. They become comfortable saying they don't know something, or that issues are more complicated than they initially appeared. This intellectual humility isn't a sign of weakness, it's a mark of wisdom. It makes you more curious, better at learning, and less likely to make overconfident mistakes. It opens you up to other perspectives and helps you avoid the trap of thinking your limited experience represents universal truth. Lesson number 10 might be the most important one for relationships. Love isn't just a feeling, it's a decision you make every day, and real intimacy comes from being known, not from being admired. Young people often think love is primarily an emotion, something that happens to you or fades naturally over time. They believe relationships should feel effortless if they're meant to be. But long-term relationships reveal that love is much more complex and substantial than initial romantic feelings. Real love involves choosing to stay committed when emotions fluctuate. It means working through conflicts, supporting each other during difficult periods, and continuing to invest in the relationship even when the excitement of novelty wears off. The deepest intimacy doesn't come from presenting your best self to someone. It comes from being fully known, including your flaws, fears, and failures, and still being accepted and valued. This kind of vulnerability requires emotional maturity and courage that often develops over decades. Young relationships often focus on compatibility and chemistry, while mature relationships understand that commitment and character matter more for long-term happiness. Lesson number 11 challenges common assumptions about happiness and life satisfaction. Happiness isn't a destination you arrive at, it's a skill you develop, and it has less to do with your circumstances than you think. Young people often believe happiness will come when they achieve certain goals or acquire certain things. They think they'll be happy when they get the dream job, find the perfect partner, buy the ideal house, or reach some other milestone. But research and experience both show that circumstances have much less impact on happiness than most people believe. People adapt to positive changes surprisingly quickly, returning to baseline levels of satisfaction. Meanwhile, some of the happiest people you'll meet have faced significant challenges and losses, but have developed the ability to find joy and meaning despite difficult circumstances. Happiness, it turns out, is more like fitness than like winning the lottery. It requires ongoing practice and attention. It comes from developing gratitude, cultivating relationships, finding purpose, managing expectations, and learning to appreciate ordinary moments. These are skills that can be learned and strengthened over time, regardless of external conditions. Finally, lesson number 12 ties everything together. The meaning of life isn't something you discover, it's something you create. And it often emerges from service to something bigger than yourself. Young people frequently struggle with existential questions about purpose and meaning. They feel pressure to find their passion or discover their calling, as if meaning is hidden somewhere waiting to be uncovered. But people who've lived full lives understand that meaning isn't found, it's made. It emerges from the choices you make, the relationships you build, the contributions you offer, and the legacy you leave. It's not a single grand purpose, but a collection of purposes that evolve as you grow and change. Often the deepest sense of meaning comes from shifting focus away from what you can get to what you can give. This might be raising children, supporting causes you believe in, mentoring younger people, creating art, serving your community, or simply being a source of kindness and stability in other people's lives. The specific form matters less than the orientation towards service and contribution. These 12 lessons represent wisdom that can only be fully appreciated with the perspective that comes from decades of living. They challenge many assumptions that young people hold about success, relationships, happiness, and meaning. Understanding them intellectually is one thing, but truly grasping their significance requires the kind of experience that accumulates slowly over time. The beautiful thing is that you don't have to wait until you're 60 to benefit from these insights. While you may not fully understand their depth without lived experience, you can begin to apply them now. You can start choosing subtraction over accumulation, investing in your health, embracing uncertainty, living more mindfully, focusing on character over achievement, and finding ways to serve something bigger than yourself. The path to wisdom isn't about avoiding mistakes or finding shortcuts to understanding. It's about living fully, paying attention to your experiences, learning from both successes and failures, and remaining open to the lessons that life offers at every stage. These 12 insights are invitations to live more intentionally, not rigid rules to follow. Remember that every person over 60 was once your age, dealing with similar questions and challenges. They've made mistakes, experienced losses, celebrated victories, and gradually accumulated the wisdom they now possess. Their insights aren't meant to make you feel behind or inadequate, but to offer guidance and perspective as you navigate your own journey. The most profound realization might be that life is both shorter and longer than you think when you're young. Shorter because the years pass more quickly than you expect and you have less time than you imagine to accomplish everything you want to do. Longer because you have more opportunities than you realize to grow, change, start over, and become the person you're meant to be. These lessons remind us that the goal isn't to rush towards some future version of yourself, but to engage fully with who you are right now, while remaining open to growth and change. The wisdom of age doesn't come from having all the answers, but from getting comfortable with the questions and learning to find joy and meaning in the ongoing process of living itself.